All right, now this is my sort of settings guide, and it's going to cover a few different aspects from performance to visual fidelity, but this is mainly going to cover a bunch of quality of life features as well that you might not have known about. And the first thing I want to cover is actually the different launcher and launcher settings. So if you play Winds Meet on PC, I do want to preface that this is a PC guide, but this is going to include both the official launcher and the Steam client, and a few different tweaks you can do outside of the game before we go in the game. So the first thing I want to mention is I play on the official client. I played on Steam at launch, but I was getting bad FPS for some reason on the Steam client, so I switched over to the official client, and I've had no problems since. It's been very smooth sailing. Now I want to talk about the different versions on the official client first. You have Light, Standard, and Ultimate isn't here yet, but that's going to have high resolution textures, and I believe will include things like ray tracing. I don't think that's even available in China yet, but we will be getting that. The devs are working on it. But for now, we have Light and Standard. The two differences is that Light is basically the mobile port, and it's very, very lightweight and runs really well, especially if you're on older hardware. But more importantly, if you're a competitive player for especially GVG, I think the Light version is the best. I use Light when I'm playing GVG, and I use Standard when I'm doing anything else in the game. And then on top of that, you also have, when this update is done, you also have the different DirectX versions. You have DirectX 12 and DirectX 11. Now, DirectX 11, I would only recommend if you're on a card that's older than like a 2060. Whatever the AMD equivalent is of that, if you're on like a really old PC, basically. There's pretty much no losses for anyone on a sort of higher end, even just a low mid-tier card. 2060 and above, you should be using DirectX 12, as it's going to give you more options. You're going to get DLSS. You're just going to get more fidelity, and especially in newer games with newer GPU drivers, DirectX 12 just has better general support. Now, Light and Standard, again, I use Light for GVG, especially when it's mass scale PvP. I get the best performance from it. But I use Standard for anything else, so we'll quickly jump into the settings of the Light version. They're not too different. And I also want to mention while we're here, if you're on Steam, you cannot use the Light version. The Light version is only available to the official client, but if you wanted to play DirectX 12 or DirectX 11 on the Steam version, you simply go to the launch options and do -DX11. That's all you need to do, and it's going to boot the game in DX11. There is one small caveat to the Light version, and that's that you can't go above 120 FPS. I've tried looking around for a config numerous times, and I just feel like it's just too hard-coded and encrypted in the game. Is more than enough for most people, right? I think 120 FPS is sort of a perfect threshold for a lot of games these days. I am a high FPS gamer, but I have a sort of mid-tier PC where I don't really exceed 120 to 150 FPS in most case scenarios. And especially GVG, like I mentioned at the start of the video, is exactly why I opt for the Light clients when I do GVG, so I can get the most performance, where I actually do come close. I think I hit around 90 to 100 FPS in GVG. I'll put some GVG gameplay up on screen. It actually runs very smooth for me. I'm on a 3070 and an 11600K. Very old CPU by today's standards, but I play at 1440p and I still get really, really nice FPS with that settings on the Light client. 1440p on the Standard client runs a little bit worse. It's still manageable, and for example, like 1v1 arenas where it's just you and one other player, it runs really well still. But that's just something I quickly want to mention. You're at 120 FPS cap. When it comes to all the settings, VSync and all that, you'll probably want to turn that off. I don't really think you should have that on. It's whatever. Visual style, you can have whatever you want. Vivid is another nice setting. I do like Vivid. I personally just go for Where Winds Meet, but if you really like those high saturation, then you can go for Vivid. You can do custom, but I believe it's limited to the solo mode. It's like using NVIDIA filters. Now, of course, DLSS, you can use it if you want. And I also want to mention that if you are on the latest NVIDIA drivers, which I can quickly open, this is exclusive to NVIDIA users. Sorry, AMD guys. But if you go to graphics and you're on the latest drivers, I think either the latest two drivers, sorry, the 27th of January, or I think it's the January the 5th drivers, you will actually have access to DLSS, is it 4, I think, which is the new DLSS model. that looks a lot sharper. It really does. Now, as you can see, I'm on a much older driver. That's because I've been having issues with my recording software and rendering, so I had to backtrack a couple drivers. As you can see how many different Where Winds Meet clients I have downloaded. But you can go down to, I think it has to load. For some reason, it takes a bit. Oh, no, it's here, isn't it? You can go DLSS overrides, and you can go, is it this one here? Custom, and then you can scroll down. I only have access. Oh, no, M is the latest one, sorry. I don't know why I can still see that on an older driver, but M is DLSS 4, so you can actually override that in the NVIDIA control panel. You can get sharper resolutions, basically. I believe in-game right now it's DLSS 3.5, which is preset K. I do want to mention that preset 4, or DLSS 4, is a much heavier FPS hit over DLSS 3.5 or K. J, I believe, is also an earlier model of 3.5. I believe F is DLSS 3, which looks kind of worse, but gives you the best performance. I actually am not using DLSS on the light clients. I only use DLSS on the standard client because that's where my performance is a little bit worse. But my performance is so good on the light client. I think I'm getting 120 FPS cap right now, and it still looks decent. I'm full low settings, and it looks alright, you know. And this is the client I use when I'm playing competitive PvP, and it still looks decent. It still runs really well. It runs fantastic, actually. And again, if you want to use DLSS 4, you can tune that in here. I can also probably go over my NVIDIA control panel settings while we're here, which I think is not necessarily going to change too much, but it might. I pretty much just run performance and off on most things. You can see them on screen here if you want to copy my NVIDIA control panel settings. Fixed refresh rate. I don't use G-Sync. If you use G-Sync, you would obviously probably leave that on. So those are my NVIDIA settings. I have a shaded cache of 100 gigabytes. I have the storage to do that. I would recommend setting a relatively high shaded cache if you have the storage to do so as well. As it's just going to prevent sort of, sometimes when you have a lot of games installed, it can build up quite a lot and you'll start to get stuttering. That also comes onto another important setting in here, is at the bottom of display. As you can see, we'll talk about the visual details in a sec, but I want to talk about Pioneer Test first. This basically helps loading if you're on a lower end to mid-tier PC like me. And again, I'm on a 3070, which is, I guess, considered lower end these days, which is kind of crazy to even think about, but it's actually more mid-tier because of the GPU outage. But yeah, texture VRAM optimization is going to help stuttering a lot. If you're experiencing stutters, turn this setting on. It's going to ask you to restart the game. Next up is real-time sunlight. This setting, having this setting off gives you a huge FPS boost, but it does come with I would say the most significant visual downgrade. So as you can see, the lighting sort of almost looks like it's not bouncing correctly with the setting off. It looks like it's almost kind of like almost like a fake render, if you will. It still looks okay, don't get me wrong. I can still happily play with this, especially in GVG. If I turn this on, you can see the bounces automatically just become more natural, and the shadows as well, because it's using global illumination, right? You're doing baked lighting versus global illumination, and I have shadows on lowest, so it was, pretty different before. This setting does again come with, I would say, probably one of the higher FPS hits, as it's global illumination. I'll have an image side by side from the video here. We can quickly turn it off again, and you'll see the difference. As you can see, there's a lot less shadow details. It just feels a lot more artificial, almost. So if you want a little bit more natural lighting, you might want to leave it on, if you don't mind the performance hit. Now, as you can see, the one setting I have on the light client, so on PvP, I have everything on low but view distance, because view distance impacts the player render distance, which is very important in GVG. If you've ever played GVG or watched someone else's GVG, and you're wondering, like, how the hell are they playing when they can't see the enemy? That's likely because they have their view distance on low, which severely hinders your GVG experience. You need to have view distance on high. It is going to cost you frames, but it's one of those settings that you kind of need to have. It's a net positive in the long run. You lose FPS, but you need that visibility of other players in a PvP scenario. As for all the other settings, I've just got them whacked on low on the light client. Now, we can quickly, I guess, cover the settings I would run on the standard client as well. we can just use the light client as a I guess a standpoint, right? So on standard, I generally bump up my visuals a little bit because I usually use it for my thumbnails and things like that. So I usually put real-time sunlight on, shadows I put on high, and I put lighting quality on high. This to me is the best mix of visual fidelity and performance. So if you like a bit of a middle ground, you're still getting those nice shadows, nice lighting bounces, nice distance shadows as well, especially on these buildings. And in my opinion, this is the best mix between low and high. We can put the game on really high, and I'll show you a side-by-side. So we'll quickly just look out at like Kai Fang here, and then we'll turn everything on high, and then we'll put a side-by-side difference. It honestly doesn't look insanely different, especially when you're playing. You're not going to notice it too much. As you can see, not really much changed. And you could make a point that that's because you're on the light client, but even then, I just truly believe that a mix of low and high is the best settings, unless you have like a 4090 or a 5090 or a 5080, some like really high-spec PC. You probably run whatever settings you want and then chuck on DLSS and you'll be sweet. DLSS on quality, I think I'm on DLSS 4 right now. Looks really good, right? It looks very high quality. I personally, again, don't use DLSS. I like the natural sort of no upscaling. As you can see, there's this sort of shimmering on the ocean over here now, and that only happened because we turned DLSS on. So if we turn DLSS back off here, you can see that that shimmering has instantly gone away, and we can sort of more clearly see the waves. A little bit hard to see, probably due to YouTube compression, I wouldn't be surprised, but it's very noticeable to me. I very much like my natural resolutions, and I prefer taking them over upscaling, especially in a competitive setting. So that is pretty much all of the visual settings, FPS settings, things like that that I would recommend. Now I want to go over some quality of life settings that you might not know about, some things that will help you on combat perhaps, and just quality of life in general. So if you jump over to the keyboard and mouse tab, if you've ever wondered how someone has all 8 Mystic Arts displayed, you need to go to settings, keyboard and mouse, and then you go to keyboard layout, pick the one you use. I use custom layout 1. The really cool thing is you can actually now have, I think, as 5 different custom keyboard layouts, which you can actually assign to different build like presets you have saved, which is really cool. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go edit. You can even name them if you want. So if you have certain key setups for certain builds, you can go down to even just renaming them so you know. My keybinds are really weird. I don't have crouch bound because I don't use it much. But the main thing we're looking at for here is the tab at the bottom, custom single. This is what allows you to have a different Mystic Art for every single key, and instead of having to hold down, I think it was previously Alt, right? So as you can see, I've got T, G, C, and V. Yes, I play like a spider with my hands. They're all like clawed out over my keyboard, but I'm using a 60% keyboard. I don't have like function keys and things. So this is what I do. I basically have the keys set up like this. And then if I go over to basic moves, or no, I think it's combat, I have the other 4 mystic skills here. So this is the first 4. This is the other, 6 to 8, right? But another 2 settings that I would recommend having on is enhanced target selection and visible target priority. Both of these settings are basically going to help you automatically target a player, especially in cases like GVG where you're not using lock on. So for example, I don't have lock on, but I want to target this enemy, but I'm facing this way. It's going to automatically snap my character in that direction, meaning I don't miss my attack and go off to the side. No matter how many times I can try and basically look away, it's going to make sure that I'm hitting the target. It could say maybe you want to use your attack for movement and you don't actually want to go towards the enemy. You might turn it off if you like using abilities for movement. But especially if you use lock on, that's not really going to be the case. It's basically, I personally just don't like lock on. If you don't use lock on and you're like me, I recommend having those 2 settings on, just making sure you hit your basically abilities, right? Another setting that I would really recommend, it's quite nice to have on, is you're going to go to your bag and you're going to hit the settings cog up top right. And then you're going to go to auto repair and turn this on. This is going to basically allow you to automatically repair your gear. You don't have to worry about it ever. And there's another checkbox where it will automatically use coins to buy the materials so you can repair your gear, which is really, really nice. Probably one of my favorite settings. You know, it's just a time saver really. Repairing gear is a little bit tedious, so being able to just make that fully automatic is quite nice. The next is auto recycle. I think auto recycle is another really nice quality of life setting that's kind of hidden alongside that auto repair. If you go in here, you can actually just add as many conditions as you would like. I only have a condition to delete anything that's purple and below with purple attributes and below. So if it's legendary, it keeps it, but if it's not, it's going to pretty much just delete it. You can also make sure it doesn't delete EXP, and it doesn't delete maybe like a affix or something like that, even though that's going to give you the shells in return. So this is really, really nice. I think this is a huge quality of life change, and just means that you have less crap in your inventory. As you can see, it still keeps the EXP ones, it still keeps the legendaries, but it gets rid of everything else. I guess I quickly want to mention, if you ever want to see things like your connection to the server, you can use things like ExitLag. So I use ExitLag for where winds meet because I play from Australia. And you can see I get around 140 to 150 ms, which is quite sad. There's no OC servers. But this allows me to see my exact ms because there's no UI interface for seeing your frames or server connection in game, which is kind of annoying. I'll also have an FPS monitoring tool in the description, which is quite nice. But yeah, I play the light client for PvP, and I play the normal client when I'm making videos or, you know, screenshots or just doing questing and relaxed stuff, and I want the game to look a little bit nicer. But heck, even then, man, I think the light client still doesn't look bad. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.